I've seen bluer ones, but you can never catch them.
Hangs up, kneels by the stove, lights another match.
She's mine, always.
The 1970s were a wild time for cinema. Big ideas, experimental storytelling, and Hollywood ambition ran rampant, but not every gamble paid off. Amid the blockbusters and cult classics, dozens of films stumbled, bombed, or simply disappeared from memory. From star-studded adaptations and lavish period dramas to bizarre sci-fi experiments and low-budget comedies, these cinematic misfires failed to captivate audiences. So, join us as we explore 25 forgotten movies from the 1970s that failed miserably. Candy-Striped Nurses, 1974. If there was ever a movie that epitomized low-budget exploitation cinema, it was Roger Corman's Candy-Striped Nurses. Part of his infamous nurse cycle, the film followed the antics of young, attractive nurses navigating romance, rebellion, and minor medical emergencies. While Corman's productions were known for their profitability, this particular entry failed to make a lasting impression.
Just yellow, you want it?
No.
Okay.
You scratch my back?
Just what does that mean?
I want you to scratch my back. I'm injured, I can't reach it.
Lost in a flood of similar titles. Critics derided its thin plot, cheesy humor, and gratuitous nudity, and audiences quickly moved on, leaving it to disappear into obscurity. Today, it survives mostly as a curiosity, emblematic of 1970s exploitation trends and Corman's knack for churning out low-budget entertainment faster than anyone could remember. Few films have sparked as much confusion and controversy as Myra Breckinridge, an adaptation of Gore Vidal's provocative novel. Featuring Raquel Welch in the title role alongside Mae West in her last major appearance, the film attempted to satirize gender, sexuality, and Hollywood excess. But audiences and critics alike recoiled at its bizarre narrative and risque content. The production was chaotic, plagued by rewrites and directorial clashes, leaving a disjointed final product that made little sense.
I took the liberty of picking up a brochure on the way in. Posture and empathy should do nicely. I'm eminently qualified to teach both. Say $1,000 a month.
Its experimental visuals and campy performances failed to land, and many called it outright offensive. While the film has since achieved cult status, its initial release was a financial and critical disaster, cementing its place as one of the 1970s most infamous flops. After Raquel Welch and Mae West's notorious misfire, could another ambitious adaptation suffer an equally spectacular fate? Imagine a film with thousands of soldiers, massive battle scenes, and a budget rivaling modern blockbusters, but still failing to impress audiences. That was Waterloo, a Soviet-Italian co-production attempting to depict Napoleon's fateful defeat in 1815. Despite grandiose sets, meticulous historical costumes, and Robert Shaw's commanding presence as Wellington, American audiences found the pacing tedious and the dialogue awkwardly translated. The movie's focus on spectacle over character development alienated viewers. And while European markets were somewhat kinder, it could not recoup its enormous production costs. Critics lambasted it for being ponderous, stiff, and overly long, proving that even colossal sets and thousands of extras cannot guarantee cinematic success when storytelling falters. Star power sometimes isn't enough to sell a romance, and Moment by Moment is a prime example. Starring John Travolta and Lily Tomlin, the film promised a tender exploration of love and modern relationships. Instead, it was met with criticism for its languid pacing, wooden dialogue, and awkward chemistry between its leads. Audiences were confused by the film's tone and quickly abandoned theaters, leaving it a notorious commercial flop.
Well, I'd like to, but my backpack got swiped. You believe that? Did you ever think of that?
Over time, it has become a punchline for romantic melodramas gone wrong, referenced for its excessive sentimentality and lack of narrative tension. Despite its high-profile cast, Moment by Moment underscores that charisma and fame cannot compensate for weak storytelling and execution. When Joan Crawford, a Hollywood legend, takes on a final screen role, expectations are high. but Trog delivered the opposite. The horror science fiction hybrid centers on a prehistoric caveman discovered in modern England, with Crawford playing a determined anthropologist trying to civilize him. Unfortunately, the film suffered from shoddy special effects, a ridiculous premise, and unintentionally campy dialogue that turned potential thrills into unintentional comedy. Critics were merciless, and audiences largely avoided theaters, leaving it a commercial flop. Yet, Trog stands out as a curious time capsule of late-career desperation for a star seeking relevance and the era's fascination with low-budget creature features. It's remembered more for Crawford's presence than for any cinematic merit. Some literary adaptations struggle, but few stumble as spectacularly as Catch-22. Boasting a star-studded cast including Alan Arkin, Martin Balsam, and Orson Welles, the film sought to bring Joseph Heller's darkly comic anti-war novel to life. However, it suffered from narrative confusion, uneven pacing, and a tone that oscillated awkwardly between satire and tragedy. Released just a few years after MASH, audiences and critics naturally drew comparisons.
A direct hit on the ocean?
Yes, sir. A marvelous bomb pattern. We have aerial photographs if you'd like to see them.
And Heller's intricate, ironic prose simply did not translate well to the screen. Though ambitious in scale and rich in performances, the movie failed to capture the novel's chaotic genius, leaving it overshadowed and underappreciated, a rare instance where even talent and production values couldn't save a film. After Catch-22 was overshadowed by MASH, could a European auteur capture America's counterculture without alienating audiences? When Michelangelo Antonioni turned his lens on America's counterculture, expectations ran high, but Zabriskie Point flopped spectacularly. The Italian director's attempt to merge psychedelic imagery with social commentary on anti-establishment movements came across as ponderous and pretentious to American audiences. Its languid pace, fragmented narrative, and surrealist sequences baffled viewers.
I think they said the guy who killed the cop was white.
Ooh, white man taking up arms with the blacks, huh? Just like old John Brown.
While critics dismissed it as style over substance. Despite a visually striking desert setting and some memorable experimental sequences, the film's disconnection from the audience's cultural context doomed it. Over time, it has gained a niche following among cinephiles fascinated by Antonioni's audacious visual experimentation. Yet at release, it was widely regarded as an expensive, incoherent misfire, confirming that even auteurs can misread their audience. Lavish productions do not always guarantee audience approval, a truth illustrated by Nicholas and Alexandra. The epic retelling of the last Russian Tsar and his family featured opulent sets, meticulous period costumes, and strong performances from Michael Jaston and Janet Suzman. Yet, its painstakingly slow pacing and heavy-handed historical exposition tested viewers' patience, turning what could have been a gripping tragedy into a tedious affair.
Fateful years, all that had endured for centuries, was destroyed, and a proud family humbled.
Despite critical nods for authenticity, it underperformed at the box office, unable to capture mainstream interest amid the lighter, more accessible fare of the era. The film remains a cautionary tale that grandeur and fidelity to history do not automatically translate into cinematic success or audience engagement. Some adaptations prove that not even a best-selling novel can guarantee box office gold, and The Adventurers is a prime example. Based on Harold Robbins' popular but pulpy book, the film promised glamorous escapades, high-stakes romance, and international intrigue. Unfortunately, the execution fell apart, with critics panning its overwrought melodrama, wooden performances, and convoluted plot twists. Despite a sizable budget and exotic shooting locations, audiences stayed away, leaving the movie a financial disaster. Its attempt at grandeur and escapism came across as hollow.
Andre Caroni out from behind the Iron Curtain, whether I get your cooperation or not.
Gene, I understand your concern, but you must face the realities.
Proving that star power and flashy visuals cannot compensate for weak storytelling. Today, it is remembered as a cautionary tale of literary adaptation gone wrong. After Harold Robbins' The Adventures sank, could a quirky detective story starring George C. Scott reverse this unlucky streak? Quirk doesn't always translate to success, as evidenced by They Might Be Giants. George C. Scott starred as a delusional man convinced he was Sherlock Holmes, while Joanne Woodward played his psychiatrist, navigating a storyline blending mystery and offbeat humor. Critics were divided, with some appreciating the clever premise, but most audiences struggled with its slow pacing and eccentric tone.
It's a mess.
It's nice. It's just like you. I think the beans are burning.
Oh, no, that's soup.
The film's intellectual whimsy failed to resonate commercially, and despite strong performances, it sank without much fanfare. Over time, it has gained a modest cult following among fans of idiosyncratic cinema, yet at release, it was largely ignored, highlighting the challenges of marketing cerebral, unconventional stories to a mainstream audience. Even legendary actors can't always save a sinking ship, as shown by The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. This mafia comedy boasted a young Robert De Niro in an early role, but neither star power nor source material could salvage its poor execution. Critics slammed the film for weak direction, uneven pacing, and unfunny attempts at slapstick, calling it a confused mishmash of crime and comedy. Audiences, expecting a compelling caper, were instead treated to a disjointed, forgettable narrative. Despite some curiosity about De Niro's performance, the movie quickly vanished from theaters. Today, it remains a footnote in 1970s cinema, a cautionary example of how ambition without coherence leads to disaster. Turning a beloved children's television show into a feature film seemed like a surefire win, but Pufnstuf proved otherwise. The movie expanded the psychedelic adventures of Jimmy and Mayor Pufnstuf to the big screen, featuring colorful sets, whimsical costumes, and outlandish puppetry. However, the charm of the TV series did not translate, leaving parents confused and kids somewhat entertained but indifferent. Critics dismissed it as shallow and overlong, while its box office numbers were abysmal.
The witch captured everybody! Oh, Jimmy! It was horrible! What are we gonna do?
Despite its failure, the film has become a nostalgic curiosity for those who grew up with the show, remembered more for its bizarre visuals and campy performances than for any cinematic merit or commercial success. After Pufnstuf flopped, can a soapily dramatic hospital story like Doctors' Wives find success with critics or audiences? Soap operas thrive on television, but when translated to cinema, Doctors' Wives floundered spectacularly. Centered on the romantic and professional entanglements of hospital staff, the film aimed to provide titillating drama but delivered an uninspired narrative and lackluster performances. Critics derided the movie for its superficial treatment of serious themes, melodramatic dialogue, and predictable plot twists. Audiences, seeking either emotional depth or escapist entertainment,
God, I feel horny.
You trying to be amusing, Laurie, or just crude?
No, I mean it.
found neither, leaving the film largely ignored. Despite a cast of recognizable actors, it failed to leave a lasting impression. Today, it is remembered only as a cautionary example of 1970s attempts to capitalize on the popularity of medical dramas without capturing the medium's charm or audience engagement. Even legendary actors cannot always save a film from mediocrity, a lesson embodied by The Wrath of God. Robert Mitchum led this Western set in Mexico, blending political intrigue, revenge, and gunslinging adventure. However, the uneven script, slow pacing, and mismatched tone left critics unimpressed and audiences disinterested.
Wenn ich agiere will, dass die Vögel tot von den Bäumen fallen, dann fallen die Vögel.
Despite atmospheric cinematography and Mitchum's usual gravitas, the story failed to resonate, with many labeling it dull and unnecessarily convoluted. Box office numbers reflected the tepid reception, rendering it a commercial flop. Today, it is largely forgotten, surviving as a footnote in Mitchum's illustrious career, notable mostly for its ambition and potential squandered by lackluster execution and misguided direction. Few disaster movies from the 70s have earned as much ridicule as The Swarm, a notorious box office failure directed by Irwin Allen, the so-called Master of Disaster. Riding high on the success of The Towering Inferno and The Poseidon Adventure, Allen attempted to cash in on the decade's obsession with nature gone wild thrillers.
What's wrong, Maureen?
Got a sudden feeling I'll never see Marysville again.
The premise was simple, yet absurd. A swarm of deadly African killer bees descends on Texas, threatening to annihilate everything in sight. With an all-star cast that included Michael Caine, Henry Fonda, Richard Widmark, and Olivia de Havilland, one might expect suspense and drama. Instead, audiences got ham-fisted dialogue, laughable special effects, and bees that looked anything but terrifying. Critics savaged the film for its melodrama and incoherence, and audiences stayed away in droves. Today, The Swarm survives only as a campy punchline in the disaster genre, a cinematic misfire too bloated to sting. Some stories are better left untouched, and Lost Horizon proved it with disastrous results. This musical remake of the 1937 Frank Capra classic attempted to infuse the utopian tale of Shangri-La with elaborate song and dance numbers, but critics were merciless. The lavish sets and choreography could not compensate for wooden performances.
Excuse me. I was looking for your brother.
He's not here.
A muddled script, and an unfortunate misjudgment of audience tastes. What was meant to be inspiring and fantastical came across as bloated and uninspired. Box office receipts reflected the critical disdain, as audiences stayed away in droves. Today, it remains a cautionary tale about tampering with beloved classics, remembered more for its over-the-top musical numbers than any lasting cinematic merit. By the time Battle for the Planet of the Apes arrived, franchise fatigue was unavoidable. The fifth installment attempted to wrap up the saga of ape-human conflict but was weighed down by a predictable plot, low-budget effects, and lackluster performances. Critics labeled it the weakest entry in the series.
We'll rebuild what's ruined and begin again. Tell me something, McDonald. Can we...
Citing sloppy writing and uninspired direction. Audiences, expecting the same thrills and philosophical depth as earlier films, were disappointed, resulting in disappointing box office returns. Though it has a minor cult following today among die-hard fans, at the time, it symbolized the decline of a once iconic franchise, proving that even established brands are not immune to creative exhaustion. With Battle for the Planet of the Apes disappointing, what could audiences make of Sean Connery in the bizarre world of Zardoz? Few films can baffle viewers as thoroughly as Zardoz. Featuring Sean Connery in a bright red, revealing costume, the movie combined dystopian sci-fi, surreal imagery, and philosophical musings that were nearly incomprehensible to mainstream audiences. While director John Boorman aimed for audacious originality, the bizarre plot
Zardoz speaks to you. His chosen one.
Peculiar dialogue and outlandish visuals left critics and moviegoers alike scratching their heads. Despite Connery's star power, the film flopped commercially, overshadowed by confusion and ridicule. Over time, it gained cult status among fans of eccentric and visually daring cinema, but at release, it was widely considered a failure. Zardoz remains infamous as one of the strangest, most polarizing cinematic experiments of the 1970s. Musical comedy can be a risky endeavor, especially when it misfires spectacularly, as with At Long Last Love. Peter Bogdanovich attempted a nostalgic homage to 1930s musicals, complete with elaborate sets, tap numbers, and star-studded casting.
In Hollywood, without divorce.
Picture Mabel Mercer not knowing this song.
Yet, the film's performances felt awkward, the musical numbers stilted, and the dialogue painfully dated. Critics pounced, calling it one of the decade's most misguided projects, and audiences stayed away in droves. Despite the director's previous successes, this misadventure tarnished his reputation temporarily. Today, it is remembered more as a cautionary example of how nostalgia and ambition alone cannot guarantee success. Its flop status has made it a notorious entry in the 1970s Hollywood history. Some franchises are doomed from the start, and Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze, exemplifies this truth. Intended to launch a cinematic universe based on the popular pulp hero, the film featured an over-the-top protagonist, campy dialogue.
Well, now you handle the documents.
Yes.
Is there anything you can remember about them?
And an inconsistent tone that confused audiences. Critics dismissed it as a low-quality adventure lacking charm or suspense, while box office returns were dismal. The film's attempt to balance pulp excitement with modern sensibilities failed entirely, leaving it stranded as a forgotten curiosity. Today, it survives primarily as a nostalgic oddity for pulp and comic fans, a reminder that not all classic heroes transition successfully from page to screen. Star power does not always equal box office success, and The Fortune is proof. Starring Jack Nicholson and Warren Beatty, the film promised zany comedy, elaborate schemes, and the charm of two leading men at the height of their fame.
I'm just loving it because it recalls my old dollhouse days when I was just a little baby.
Unfortunately, the execution fell flat, with critics criticizing its uneven pacing, forced humor, and lack of genuine chemistry between the leads. Despite the presence of female co-star Stockard Channing, audiences found the plot contrived and the jokes uninspired. The result was a critical and commercial disappointment that quickly disappeared from theaters. Today, it is remembered mainly as an odd footnote in the careers of Nicholson and Beatty, illustrating that star names cannot always salvage a weak script. International collaborations can be ambitious, but sometimes they backfire spectacularly, as with The Bluebird. This U.S.-Soviet co-production sought to adapt Morris Maeterlinck's classic play into a visually lavish fantasy.
And remember, I am always in every spreading sunbeam. Always.
Starring Elizabeth Taylor and featuring enormous sets, intricate costumes, and a heavy emphasis on magical realism. However, the film's narrative was criticized as muddled, slow, and overly sentimental, failing to connect with either American or Soviet audiences. Despite its impressive production values and star-studded cast, it flopped at the box office. Today, The Bluebird is remembered primarily as a curiosity, a rare example of Cold War cinematic cooperation, and a cautionary tale of how high ambitions do not guarantee cinematic or commercial success. With The Bluebird failing to impress, is it possible that a Hollywood dog-centric comedy like One Ton Ton could charm audiences? Some comedies are destined to fail, and One Ton Ton, The Dog Who Saved Hollywood, stands as a prime example. The film attempted to parody the golden age of Hollywood through the antics of a dog who becomes a movie star, featuring cameos from dozens of real-life legends.
Sir, you're fired as the girl. You're fired as the boy. You're fired as the dog.
Despite the novelty of its concept, audiences found the humor forced, the slapstick overdone, and the storyline incoherent. Critics were merciless, labeling it a confused, scattershot attempt at nostalgia and comedy. Even the presence of rising stars and veteran actors could not salvage its commercial performance. Today, the film survives largely as a punchline and a curiosity, remembered more for its ambition than its execution. Ambition and prestige do not always translate to success, a lesson demonstrated by The Last Tycoon. Adapted from F. Scott Fitzgerald's unfinished novel, the film boasted a star-studded cast including Robert De Niro.
What are you doing here?
I'm with Martha Dodd's party.
Tony Curtis and Jack Nicholson. Lavish sets, period detail, and meticulous costume design filled the screen. but critics and audiences alike found the pacing sluggish and the narrative confusing. The story's subtleties and Fitzgerald's complex prose did not translate effectively, leaving viewers disengaged. Despite the promise of glamour and literary pedigree, the film flopped at the box office. Today, it is mainly studied for its ambitious attempt to adapt literature to cinema, a reminder that even star power cannot guarantee commercial or critical success. Sequels are tricky, and Exorcist II: The Heretic is often cited as one of the worst missteps in cinematic history. Following the monumental success of The Exorcist, the film tried to expand the story with surreal visuals, metaphysical themes, and heavy exposition.
He's mine. He's chosen me. Pazuzu's Reagan is the only Reagan.
Unfortunately, the narrative was convoluted, performances stiff, and effects overbearing, leaving critics and audiences bewildered. Despite the attempt to capitalize on a proven franchise, it was universally panned and tanked at the box office. Today, it serves as a cautionary tale in Hollywood lore, a sequel that failed to honor its predecessor while alienating viewers, demonstrating that even a hit franchise cannot survive a poorly executed continuation.